Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Great Rewiring, AI Industry and the Architecture of Global Resilience. My name is Nicole Bittner. I'm one of the founding partners of Merantix Capital and the founder and CEO of Merantix Momentum. Maybe just 2 words about us. Merantix is an AI group based out of Berlin. We are working very hard every day to drive AI adoption and innovation in Germany and across Europe. And we run an early-stage investment fund, Merantix Capital, invest in innovators and founders across Europe. I see some of them in the audience, whoever is interested in logistics and stuff. And then with Merantix Momentum, we help organizations on the transformation journey. We build AI applications and products for our clients. And AI House is one of the Welcome to AI House. This is a collaboration with ETH and is a multi-stakeholder house where we want to build ecosystem. And if you're ever in Berlin or London, Merantix also runs an AI campus in Berlin. Lots of events, a lot of innovators bring together corporates, startups, and researchers, government around this topic. And we also have a hub in London. So feel free and enjoy the program this week. Well, we are living through a structural shift in the global economy. Artificial intelligence is no longer just improving efficiency or automating. It's sort of fundamentally rewiring how industry works. And it's dividing, I would say, I feel there is a divergence created between 3 groups. We have a group that is building AI, and produces intelligence. We have those countries and companies that are consuming AI. And then we have those that are coordinating a lot of the complexity. And this divergence will shape productivity, will shape GDP growth and geopolitical influence, where we've already started discussing on the spaghetti bowl of factors, right? And I think what makes this a moment different is speed. Decision cycles are so much faster, right? It's really critical to basically know within minutes, right? What maybe you had time for on a time scale of months before, you now want to know at the tip of your fingers. So this panel is about understanding what is really changing beneath the surface, which industrial architectures are emerging, how power is being redistributed, and what resilience actually means in an AI-driven world. I'm very pleased to be joined by an outstanding group of panelists. Our first panelist is Pravina Ladva. She's Group Chief Digital and Technology Officer at Swiss Re, one of the world's leading reinsurance companies and a member of the Group Executive Committee. Pravina brings deep experience from financial services and insurance, having led large-scale digital platforms, technology transformations, and operating model change at institutions including Santander, Barclays, and Swiss Re. She's responsible for driving digital and AI transformation at global scale, making her perspective on risk resilience and AI especially valuable today. Thank you very much for joining us.
Great, thank you. Great to be here.
Our second panelist is Malik Rao, Chief Technology and Enterprise Business Officer at Telefonica Germany, O2. Malik is responsible for enterprise business technology and data and AI, with more than 25 years of international experience across 8 countries and leadership roles at Vodafone, Aircel, Ericsson, and Nortel. He brings a unique perspective on AI at the intersection of telecommunications, enterprise services, and critical digital infrastructure. Thank you as well, Malik, for joining us.
Pleasure.
So Pravina, I remember actually as a student, I once visited your beautiful Center of Global Dialogue in Zurich. And I imagine these days you're convening a lot of teams around there because everybody's curious about how to think about risk. How does a risk company like Swiss Re look at AI, and what are the implications for your business model?
Yeah, no, great question. And I'm really glad you enjoyed that centre because it's very popular. And I think I'm in a unique position sitting here because I think I've got the best view out the window. So I'll try and concentrate on the question in hand. So in terms of how we think about it, now AI and data are central to our strategy, our built to lead strategy. And that's recognizing the transformative nature of this capability. So we think about it in terms of how can it help transform our organization, not only our organization, but also the insurance and the reinsurance industry, and really look at our core processes. whether it's claims, whether it's underwriting, whether it's actuarial work, and think about it both in terms of changing the operating model of the organization, but also the skills and capabilities that we're going to need. So it's no longer this thing that sits on the side or sits in the basement that in the past many technology things have happened to be. This topic is now front and center of our strategy because we believe it fundamentally, and we already have proof points, because we fundamentally believe what it can do for us is truly transformative.
Mm-hmm. And where do you see power being redistributed as AI reshapes industries and global markets? I mean, right, risk is often about, hey, what is a danger, what is an opportunity? How do you see this shift sort of affecting businesses?
Yeah, and I think it will cause a shift. I mean, years ago, and I think if many of you attended WEF a few years ago, the buzzword was ecosystems. How do we create ecosystems? Now I think it's about, who produces and who consumes. Now, if you think who produces the technology, and it's all the big tech players and the distributors of that technology, they'll create the agents, and that's that. So then you could almost assume that creates a power vacuum in itself, because then the other people is who's consuming that, and that will be organizations like ourselves and many organizations that are in the room today. But the risk then becomes for any organization is how do you not get disintermediated? And how do you not just become something that creates a platform where, you've got users and distributors, and then what you almost see is a platform in between that uses that capability. So I think the power shift will come in terms of, and that's why it becomes really important for us particularly about ensuring you know what your IP is and protecting that, looking at data and looking at data accuracy and resilience. Because the fundamental thing that underpins all of this is digital trust. So digital trust, how are we making sure that governance and security is at the heart of what we do? And still, we're in early days. This is still very human-centric, so we are all still learning. And I often reflect, sometimes we talk about this thing, it has been around for years, and in its infancy, it has, but the maturity of it, we're not quite there yet. So I think a lot of what is to come ahead of us, no one knows, because everybody's still experimenting, and very few people have done this at scale. And that, for me, is going to be the most interesting thing and the most transformative thing.
Well, and we'll be talking about more of this. Malik, how is AI changing the role of telecom operators, sort of from pure connectivity providers to intelligence and platform partners for industry?
In fact, telecom as an industry, I think it's been pretty much in everywhere. Right? Everywhere, because every rooftop or whenever you are connected, I'm sure all of you have multiple phones, we are 500 meters away. For any connection to really sustain, we are 500 meters away. So on one side, it's a completely distributed infrastructure. Second side, we are the most real-time, right, where milliseconds count. Right? It is not even seconds. Right? Every signal, wherever you are processing, the intelligence in the network, it has to be processed at milliseconds level. The third aspect is what Praveena mentioned in terms of trust. How many times you have seen your own bill end of the month to say, is my bill right or wrong? No, not. When I see in my network of 45 million customers, very less people are looking at and say, when I'm connecting every call, is the call trustworthy? Can it maintain integrity? Can it maintain the sovereignty? And then that is what is expertise of telecommunication as an industry. So, and then AI, which is coming up. I mean, we are pretty good as an industry in terms of adopting every new technology. This is the most technology absorption industry, 2G, 3G, 4G, 5G, whatever G comes in, this industry takes it in 18 to 24 months, we deploy at scale, serving multi-million customers. But AI is a disruptive for us. It is, while we run a lot of wireless networks, when I was just looking at it, rewiring a wireless network. Right? That's kind of impact which it's going to create for us. So as an industry, we're really good in adoption, not great in disruption, right? Because we've been a continuous service provider for everybody.
And what have you had to change in your operating model, in your governance, in your software or like hardware architecture to kind of be ready for AI at scale?
Yeah, I think two things. So on one side, you have, because the technology is telecom industry is quite, we are Telefonica itself is a 100 years old company, right? A 100 years old company, people who are working in the company for 20 years, 25 years. How much of investment are we making in transforming or educating the people to really go and learn? I think that has been our centerpiece in the last, say, at least 6 years since the cloud adoption started. I mean, we were one of the first, operator at scale to go to a public cloud as a strategy for critical workloads. Again, I'm not saying public cloud just because of technology. It disrupts us as a team. Because when you manage a workload on-prem versus a cloud, you have a significant change which you have to go through as a team. So we've invested or over-invested on people and culture. That's the number one piece. Technology could come in. I mean, I don't say technology is afterthought, but people and culture has to be at the core of everything what we have done. Because it is changing. I mean, every year, cloud has been there. Cloud is now significantly changing from centralized to distributed workload. So people form the core of our strategy. Number one. And the second is, once you have a team who can absorb technologies, then it's easy to go at scale because we are built for scale. We are not an industry which is like a small scale industry, right? We are at a scale with a 45 million customer. If I did Telefonica, 340 million customers in 12 different countries, 3 different continents, it has to be scale. If it doesn't scale, nothing works in telecom.
Yeah, and I think I think that's the really interesting point, because we were talking about this a bit earlier. Often we think technology first, and I really don't think this is a technology challenge. So when my team talked about, do we choose provider A or provider B, I'm like, choose whichever, they're both going to work. For me, for us, the fundamental difference is how it fits within the organization and what is everything else that you have to either change, adapt to really get the ROI. Because I think this year is, so the last couple of years was every organization, and anybody who looked on LinkedIn will see this, everybody was saying, I've got X thousand use cases, look at these proof of concepts. And there were some amazing learnings there. This year, we have to turn those learnings into scale and real ROI for the companies. Now, technology clearly has a part to play in that, but it's much bigger. You could build the best technology, but if people don't adopt it, don't use it, you don't adopt your processes, your operating model, the appropriate governance, it's not going to work. So I think it's thinking about it at broader scale. And that's why this conversation is no longer a CIO, CTO conversation, it's a CEO conversation. And I think the organizations who are moving towards that are going to realize the ROI. It's not going to be easy. Scaling is like, so when using the example that Malik gave, it's easy doing a proof of concept. But when you take that into your broader technology space and you have to integrate it with your existing technology, your existing architecture, it's hard. On top of that, you've got people who have great colleagues who've worked in the same way for the last 20, 30 years. And now you're saying, look at these new tools, let's use them. And they're looking at you going, well, I've always done it this way. So I actually think the bigger challenge for every organization is the change management aspect.
And can you, so you've opened 2 interesting doors, and I want to go down both, but we have to divide and conquer a bit. So one is the topic about people and what to change in the organization. So, and the other one is about ROI, and I would like to have that discussion afterwards. But maybe you can both give some concrete things, right? Because you both stress this importance of putting the human at the center, thinking about change management. What are some of the learnings you can share that you found very impactful in your organization to actually drive this adoption?
So let me give you a couple of examples. I think it's a top-down and a bottom-up approach. So very early on, we made the tools available to the entire organization. Now we could have sat there and said, let's work out the ROI for everything. We'd have still been there calculating. So it was a risk-based company decision, so we gave the tools. And what we found is people who did their day-to-day processes suddenly had a new capability, and they were innovating. And what we then did was pick those nuggets, celebrate them, from the CEO's stage and show them as use cases of, look what you can do is if you have the tool, you have the business knowledge, and you create this, and we celebrate that. And so people recognize it, and then that generates more recognition around what is the art of the possible. And then from the other angle is we bring in outside-in expertise. So we have formed an AI council of academia, people from government, who bring in, and from other organizations, who bring in their intelligence and know-how to say, have you thought about the future? And then we share that with the community. So I think it's a mix of hands-on, because if you don't use it, you're going to be afraid of it. So it's hands-on, education, and then continual awareness. This is not a one and done, because the technology, as we know, is moving so fast. I could use it today and be really disappointed by something, going, I thought it'd be better than that. 2 weeks later, it's done it. So I think it's continuous engagement and celebrating the successes that people have.
So optimizing a bit more for recognition for people than an abstract ROI in Excel?
So you have to do both.
Okay.
So I think there is definitely the change management
Yes.
to get people to use it and get through that change curve. On the other side, it's like any other program. You have to think about what you're investing and what your return is going to be. But the return will be accelerated if people adopt it. Because you can build it, you can implement it in your core process, but if people aren't using it, the ROI is going to come. So I'll give you one last example. In the insurance industry, one of our biggest challenge is around data ingestion. So information flows in different formats, different shapes and sizes across the industry. This is the first capability that can extract that and save us a lot of time. So what does that enable people to do is do more value-added tasks and not focusing on gathering information. They're spending more time on analysis and determining what that actually means. So that is enabled by people, capability, and a process change.
Fantastic.
Yeah,
Malik,
for us, I think two things is started off. One is, as Praveena mentioned, it's no more just a technology or one functional domain. When you talk about disruptive technologies, like 3-4 years back, of course, it is cloud. Now it's AI. What we felt was empowering people and across the organization. So I remember about 4 or 5 years back when we looked at the cloud as one of the example, because telecoms was not really, because of security, privacy, encryption, we were a bit hesitant to really move the workloads onto cloud at scale. We've done a lot of pilots, but then when we started looking at empowering people, freedom to go for the trainings. If I take my own example, every training has to be approved by a manager for every engineer or everybody who is working in the organization. We have about 9,000 people organization in Germany itself. Look at the number of layers where you get approval. So we launched a program about 4 years, almost 5 years back, to say anybody who wants to do a certain level of base cloud trainings, you don't need approval. And one single cost center, which is technology cost center. I'll absorb everybody, right from HR to marketing, everybody can do it. And we ended up in having 30% of the trainings were consumed by a non-technology team. And once it happens at scale, then second, we look at its impact. Right? You have to also let go in terms of the governance of the financials. Of course, as an industry, we are a pretty CapEx intensive industry. Right? We spend close to 16% of our revenues on CapEx. So we get a little bit of flexibility and say, okay, anything which is less than €1 million, you don't need approval. A team can decide, an agile team of 6 people can decide to execute a project, right, once. Because every month you can't keep on doing this one. And then we were able to bring in those kind of things and said, let's do impact assessment every 6 months. What impact have we created? Impact at scale. So these are the 2 things which worked very well. And that's what we're trying to do with AI right now. Again, AI, it's a distributed landscape. We have 26 data lakes or 26 different data residencies. We had only 9 owners of data about 2.5 years back when we looked at it. Only 9 owners. But we have 26 data lakes which we created historically. Now, how do you go and implement that one? So use cases are good. We did that one. Impact. And then second is industrializing the AI. Industrializing AI is not easy. We might talk a lot in terms of the models and everything. Inference and making impact on the balance sheet is a very hard thing.
Let me dig a little bit deeper there. I'm really interested that you say you made all the trainings, basically, you took out friction.
Yeah.
You basically said, okay, let's make this a friction-free process to get training. And so when we talk about like empowering people, what do we mean? So when is somebody empowered? How do you measure this? You were talking about measuring impact of initiative.
Take the governance, the financial
daily active
governance.
usage?
Exactly. I mean, go every day you look at, or every week, or whenever we look at a budget, how is the budget governed in the company? How many layers have to sign up before a purchase order, or something has to go to a
but I mean, like AI empowered, right? If I understood correctly, what you said is we wanted to empower people to use the technology, right? And then you took out friction, everybody could get training. So just conceptually, right? How do we think about like when is somebody, and I mean, probably there's no endpoint because the technology is moving so fast, but when do we have a sense as organization, okay, now it's feeling right and we can kind of measure it? Like, do we look at daily active use? Do we say, no, it's actually the impact initiatives? I see people, right? You were saying you see people doing initiatives, you praise them, right? Because it's conceptually quite, you're hitting a moving target.
Yeah.
And there's also like a curve of like how fast people are, how heavy people use it. So how do you think about this?
It's balance of both. If I look at it, roughly about 2 or 3% of my budget, that's how I measure it. I can do pilots, trials, 2 or 3% of my budget. Once it starts hitting 5, I start really wanting to see what impact are we creating. Till that time, we let people try it out. I mean, there will be a time for us to bring method to the madness. That method is important, but you need some madness in the company to really go and to do this kind of thing. Otherwise, you're killing the innovation.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And the cost of that one, at least in my case, we said, okay, about 2%, 3% of my budget, I can allow the madness. I mean, we have about 200 use cases of AI, but believe me, none of the 200 have created any value, but something out of the blue which came up, a compelling event. For me, the compelling event was the Ukraine war. Energy was, I mean, we never measure energy in telecoms the way we measure the traffic. We measure the traffic every second, every minute, every microsecond because you have mobility. You are a life. So you're measuring the life, or you're managing the life. You're not governing the life. But this came up as a surprise for all of us, and particularly in Germany. I'm sure all Germans would know in 2024, the price of energy has shot up 10 times. And my exposure itself in 1 year, we spend about 190 million euros of energy consumption every year. And my exposure of close to 400 million exposure. Of course, we had hedging and all, and then that created the entire organization to really see, shit, what do I do now? And that is where AI was most effective. So I'm not expecting that I want to create these compelling events, but we as leaders need to create that compelling events, a burning platform or whatever you call it. I think those things will have a significantly big impact.
Okay, and for that you kind of need to do the groundwork, right? People
Absolutely.
have to be familiar with tools and then be like, okay, I can jump in here and use it, and here can have impact.
I think everybody needs to use it in their day-to-day. And I think the biggest, clearly we have the bigger, broader programs, and we look at some of our critical processes end to end, and we say, how can we do this process differently with the capability that we've got? Or what are the problems and the pain points we've had in the past that now we can solve, like data ingestion, that we've never been able to solve before? So that's one way. So you have to do that more strategically, but in parallel, you have to do the groundwork up. So we have real cases where the innovation comes out totally out the blue. So a colleague in our HR community said towards the end of last year, we're going into end-of-year reviews. And that for a colleague is a moment of truth. When you sit down and you say, what kind of year did you have? What's your development needs? Where can we help a coach and develop? They created a tool on their own where they pull in someone's objectives, all the feedback, all the performance, and it gives you the first write-up, the first draft. Now, that allows the line manager, which is, again, going back to human in the loop is really critical, the line manager to focus more on the conversation as opposed to spend time writing that up. So that is something that was developed, and now we've put that on the portal. Whole company can use it. Another example is what the world's leading life and health reinsurer in terms of underwriting. We have something called Life Guide, which all our clients use. and it's that thick. If it was paper, it would probably be that thick. But what we've done is it's digitized, and we've given that to all our clients. So in underwriting, one of our clients can literally go online, go immediately to the section that they need to see. So we know that from our clients' feedback, that is saving them so much time and navigating. So I think often we make the mistake of looking for the big, complex, the big, audacious things, and actually the advantage and the impact is often in the smaller things.
Okay, so now this gives me a good segue to go through that second door of ROI and impact, and maybe to link it also to timelines, because we're all thinking about how can you're making investments, you're describing this, you're giving people tools, you're giving people enablement and so on. And then the big question is like, how does that hit your top line, bottom line? How does that impact your financial results? And I'd be really curious to hear from both of you, how do you put this on a timeline? I mean, I'm a VC investor, so I kind of think of, when I see a team, I think kind of in a decade. I think, okay, this business model, they're gonna find clients, they're gonna do things, but I really want to invest in companies that will make an impact. Like in 10 years, they're gonna really be game changers. They will change an industry. Now, we all know even to make that, you need small steps leading up. So how do you balance these different time horizons in your organization? How do you think of it? Like, this is the big picture transformation, and these are the milestones or things we need to hit on the way. I'd be really curious because I feel it's a field of tension.
Yeah.
Happy to pick up. I mean, if I look at it, we have, of course, different heartbeats in the entire domain of technology, right? The landscape, I mean, our asset book value of only in Germany is about 6 billion. Now, if you take every domain has its own speed. For example, anything on the access domain is 1 quarter. Anything I want to do, an initiative, I want to see end of the quarter, what is my OPEX, CAPEX? That's easy to measure because every distributed location, like I just said, every 500 meters you have a infrastructure there on the rooftop, right? So that is easy to measure. And that's where we say any impact, any initiative which we do on the access network has to be a 3-month kind of outcome. The second most important thing also what we feel is, because technology is moving so fast, how do you get rid of the tools which you're not using it or not working it? Because in companies like us who are 100-year-old companies, people are, average age is significantly higher, they're married to the tool. Once you buy a tool, they're married, and you don't want to get away from the tool, because you have a supplier ecosystem which keeps feeding in. There's a lot of discussion and incremental progress. So how do you really get rid of the technology debt what we create? We at least trying to do at this point of time, every 6 months, we would look at the tools what we deployed, specifically on AI, and say, is it working or not? If it is not, just take it out. Right? Yes, it is creating some capex or write-off, or say, there is definitely a technology debt what we create. So cleaning up that one. The second thing is, it's a mid to long term, which is roughly about a 2-year kind of life cycle. That is on the core of our systems. Now, core systems, wherever we are, we look at security, resiliency, the most important thing, right? Data privacy. Right, and encryption. Because if we don't encrypt these things, we don't want to put any tool which doesn't meet to these 4 things. And that is where you have a 2-year business case, at least 24 months. So that's the heartbeat which we work on in the landscape.
Yeah, sort of building on some of those points, I think, first of all, what we do is you have to create a belief. And that comes from a proof of concept. So we normally run something, especially for our big strategic AI initiatives, you almost create a belief and go, this is the hypothesis, let's try something, is it going to work? We ring fence that to 10 weeks. And after that, we see we're using real data, using production systems, is this really going to work? Then the team will predict over which time frame the ROI can be realized. Now, some things can be short term, some things can be in 2 years, some things are going to be 5 years plus. But I think what we do is set a strategic ambition at the company level. So there is a North Star that we're heading towards, and we believe what is possible. But I think even if I take a bigger step back, I think it's easier to spend the money, super easy to spend, and faster. But I think the benefits are going to take industry-wide will take longer than any of us think,
Yes.
for all the reasons I've talked about.
Yes.
And therefore, there has to be what I call strategic patience. You know, everybody's going to go, give me the business case, give me the business case. It's easy to show how much you're going to spend. But then then you have to have checks and balances. So checks and balances on two areas. One check and balance is, you know, what are your intermediate milestones? How are you going to release the product? Are you hitting those milestones at what cost? And are you still getting proof points along the way? And we have every company has a stringent policy around that. The other thing is, which historically organizations haven't been good at doing, is if it's not working, stop it. So you have to stop things as well as accelerate things. So I would say, create the belief, lay out the milestones that get you to that path, have an ambition, but stop it if it's not heading in that direction, because it'll be easier to spend than get the benefit. Track the benefit so you've got learning, but also be patient because it's going to take longer.
Well, thank you. So before we open up for the audience, because I'm sure you have lots of questions, let me take the corner to resilience. Ravina, how do you think, what is resilience in this age of intelligence, of changing geopolitical dynamics? How do you think about this as an organization?
Resilience, right now, it's clearly going to be one of the key topics this week here.
Yeah.
Resilience for us is about, again, I'll go back to what I said right at the beginning, it's about that digital trust. So on the topic of AI, how do you constantly build in checks and balances? Human in the loop is critical. Checking that the models are behaving how you expected them to behave. The data ownership and the data clarity is a core part of it. But also understanding what opportunity this creates. Because now we're probably able to quicker assess risks in the world that perhaps would have taken longer to do. So I think it creates resilience from a societal perspective as well as an organization perspective.
Malik, what's your take? What's the role of telecoms in this world of changing, not just economically but also societal?
It's a multi-level of changes. Of course, your customer behavior is changing.
Yes.
Right. We never thought people start looking at AI tools to select a product, which we start seeing it now. A very small case, but we start seeing it. Right. From that level of change, micro changes, to a macro geopolitical. I was just telling before, right? We never, 3-4 years back, we never considered geopolitics as one of our criteria when we are making decisions. When in telecoms, we make a significant big decisions.
Yes.
And whatever decisions we make, it's going to be at least decade, minimum decade. So I'm not at times super worried about lock-in with the suppliers because we've been working with all the suppliers, whether it's Ericsson, Nokia's of the world for 20 years on the same thing. I think the biggest change which happened is right now when we look at it, resilience, supply chain resilience is the most important thing for us now. Whenever we're making decisions the last 2 years, that scores top of the line. Technology comes number 2 or number 3, right? Geopolitics, technology resilience, and then the change of, in the age of AI, it's extremely important for us not to get tempted that, okay, I want to try it out, because we run critical infrastructure of the country. Imagine if something goes down on a critical infrastructure, right? In any place, you're in Berlin, sure, you have the power outage which happened.
Yes, oh my God, yeah.
Right, look at it. A simple vandalism or something can create, the entire city can go into, say, we don't want AI to come into and start trying and tampering those kind of, working on those infrastructures. So we are extremely cautious. On one side, we want to be extremely forward-looking because technology is something in telecoms. You talk to any supplier on the planet, they have something or the other to do in telecoms. Right from OpenAI to Anthropic, everybody wants to do because there is data. There is a data and it's real time. So that's where we got to be careful. We don't really have any impact of sovereignty, resilience, and redundancy. This becomes a core part of our business. So it's extremely you have to be extremely careful when we talk about it. But geopolitical resiliency or redundancy, I think the sovereignty, these are kind of open book topics. I'm sure tomorrow, I hope everything will be okay. You never know. Every day, everything is changing. No, that worries me a lot.
Well, you have been off your phone for almost an hour, so watch out. I guess a good moment to open it up. If you have questions, tell us briefly who you are. Make it a question. That would be great. Please, we have a microphone, I think. Who has questions? Here in the front, I see one, in the back two, and here three. So.
Okay, Linas Petkevičius, head of AI Methods Lab in university. My question is, so firstly, great insights, really appreciate. My question is, from your point of view, how the timeline changed for the investments and the product management in this really emerging AI technologies? For a long time, in the last 5 years, you would see the large companies which would have like 5, 10-year projects with the long-term investments, and now you're seeing that technology is really changing. Does this impact that now the projects should be quick, short-term, or it's still long-term investments feasible?
I think it is feasible. It is feasible that we can try out these technologies because our domains are so big that you can try out in different domains. I think that's what we've been. Like, we have about 100 AI projects in the last, say, 3 years, right? The question for me is domain-based AIs is really good. It's fast, but across the domains, I mean, that's where the agentic comes into picture, right? Across the domains, how do you really build these things? And that will take time. But doing a use case in verticals, it's now, I'm not worried about vertical use cases anymore in the organization. I'm super worried in terms of how do I correlate? When the correlation comes in, right, that's where the agentic form of AI comes. AI will be a significant impact. That's where we are careful, at least a 12 months kind of cycle. It's no more a 3 months kind of cycle.
No, I'd agree. I mean, in the verticals, I'll give you a real example. We're already using it in claims, like many insurers and reinsurers. And now it's around how do you now create that end-to-end value chain and ensure the insights you're getting from that are then fed into the front part of the stage. So I think the tech is moving. I mean, every day it changes. Every day you wake up and there's a new model, there's a new way of doing it. So I think the speed of technology is, exponential. I think the adoption still needs to get there because the power is really in the execution. And let's not forget, we're implementing this technology in corporates who've worked in a certain way for many, many years. So the ways of working are fundamentally going to have to change, but we will never get to the pace of how quickly these things are coming off the virtual conveyor belt.
Maybe just one more comment in terms of the across domains, right? And at the same time, the impact across domains, because that is when it starts people, right? How many people are really capable of cross-domain correlation? I think that's where it starts. And my biggest worry on AI also is the young graduates who are coming in, the trainees. Most of those jobs can be automated. And I recruit trainees who are coming in. And when I talk to them, I say, okay, this job can be automated. Why do I need a trainee? Or that's a bit of challenge right now which we're facing, right? Attracting talent, but how do you really get, because everything is possible, no? Any undergrad, any grad who is coming in, that job can be automated. That's a big challenge.
Roman Ahmed here, Digital Loom, Boston, Massachusetts. I work in the AI transformation space, and I'd like to hear your opinion, expertise, and suggestion. People usually jump right to build a solution, AI solution. It's the truth that the AI is here to resolve our problems. We just need to use it wisely. What we experienced and observed many clients, that the problem actually resides to defining, articulating the problem to target. And you probably heard that MIT, from their research, figure out that 95% of the prototypes and MVPs just crash and go nowhere. And some other research companies confirm that as well. So where to start? What we figure out, a long story, Kashiwa, the fishbone approach to it, to create what the problem is and the value problem. Really, you need to gain, that's the AI business to gain the value from it. And it's absolutely different what we already observed till now. So you need to have different approach to it. Again, articulation of the problem, figuring out.
Is it a question, or are you answering your question?
So the question is really,
where do you start?
Where do you start?
Yeah,
Okay,
no,
fantastic.
happy, no,
Thanks for
happy,
your question.
Yeah, no, happy to have a go at that. And I think you're right. I think that, going back to what I said earlier, it's not about what tech can do. It's fundamentally understanding the opportunity. That opportunity could be solving a pain point or creating more revenue. And so where you start just really practically, and this is going to sound really boring, but get your experts in the room. Don't talk about tech, talk about the challenges, talk about the opportunities. Get a whiteboard out, map out the old, do it old school style, map out the process, find out the breakpoints, and then see how, actually, do you still now need to do it that way? Or does this capability give you a leverage to fundamentally change the way you've done it? So start with start with the business, start with the SMEs. Don't go in going, I've got this tool, what do you want to do with it? Start with, here's my challenge and my opportunity.
Absolutely.
For us, one fundamental change was writing the requirement, the RFPs we call typically, right? Once you write an RFP and then read that RFP, because it is written 100 times, you do cut paste of all these RFPs, the requirements doesn't really change.
Yeah.
And nobody is able to really pinpoint what exactly do I want. If I take my own example of, we do about 1,600 kind of RFPs every year. And now I feed that into the machine and say, what do we want? And 90% of the time, it's difficult because nobody wants to own. Because people are not empowered that they can own something. You write because nobody is fired because you choose an IBM in your IT infrastructure. Right? So that's the big change which we have to give. We have to make our people to feel that they can do mistakes. These industries are not prepared to.
Yeah, but I feel like to second you also when we look at ventures or at use case in organizations that it has to be a real problem, right? We have all these tools, and I understand also in my teams many technologies and love to play with things, right? And I guess there is an element, and you both described it, to playfulness in an early phase. But then if it's not a hair on fire problem that you're solving, are you using your energy on the right topic?
And your imagination.
Yes, and your imagination, yeah. There's another question here, 3, 4, 5, so...
So I'm a technology CFO, so I'm going to ask a strategic question from that lens. Pravina, you talked about tools and using tools and use cases. Malik, you talked about burning platform and looking across domains. I was part of a leadership team that moved the Yahoo infrastructure, it's a well-known project, from over 50 different country infrastructures and codes to the cloud. To one code. Similarly, we did a transformation project at Weather Company as well. So here's my question. So when is there the switch over to decide that you want to re-architect the whole company using AI like many companies have done with the cloud, for example? When is the turning point to build a new company, if you're a legacy business, to build a new company based on the new technology, keep the old company running, the old business model, create cash flows, and then switch over?
I think it depends a little bit on the industry life cycle. Let's take example of telecom. Telecom is in a kind of because the revenues are more or less flat. It's a fantastic business. They still generate close to 30% kind of EBITDA, right? So as an industry thinking is a little bit of the heartbeat is different. What I normally see is where I don't think prescription, but at least the mental model is whenever you are able to make at least 20% of change in the organization, that's where the inflection point comes in. Then you can make a decision, do you want to go centralization, do you want to go to federation, right? A federated model. Today, in the age of AI, I'm a strong believer of federating model because the intelligence has to be across multiple areas because one truth is no more a real, right? A one centralized balance sheet of Telefonica may not be the real one. Of course, you want to consolidate, but you want to have every business, every country, because the change is so quick. When that federated model is something which we think it will work. And you can have the scale, or you can have an inflection point roughly about 20%. For example, on the cloud, I always said, if we are able to make at least 15 to 20% of our workloads, or in terms of finance, we were doing, let's say, if I take my OpEx, if my OpEx crosses to 20%, then it becomes core of my infrastructure. Otherwise, you're playing the edges. When you play in the edges, you can't scale, right? Unless you change the core, you can't scale the edges. That's how I see it. So it has to be an iterative process, and organization needs to be agile to make those kind of decisions. And specifically for CFOs, of course, I have a fantastic CFO who is super agile, honestly, super agile to really think about, okay, what can I make? How do I solve the business? And that is where the CFOs, if becomes a business partners, try it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very good. Should we go to the next question? Sure. Here's the next, and then you.
Thank you so much for speaking about the innovation, the freedom for experimentation, and the part to really empower everyone to feel that they can go and experiment and explore without the fear to make mistakes. I would love to understand from your perspective in the leadership, what are the main indicators? Because you spoke about when things are not going in the direction that you want them to go. What are your indications that things are not going for a particular project or initiative in the right direction to stop the project? I mean, you did speak about that, and if you could go into a few of the details of your indication.
I mean, we've all heard about watermelon projects. Okay, so it's all green. Day before live, it goes red. Somebody somewhere knew that was going to happen. Yeah. So what we need to do on this particular initiative is understand how you don't end up with watermelon projects. So what you need to have during the pathway is, what are your critical milestones? So you will have had a vision of where you want to go to. You will have a view of what are your proof points along the way. And then it requires creating that environment of, it's easier to say than done, psychological safety, where everybody has an equal voice, everybody can raise concerns, and you get into the detail to say, okay, we've got a challenge. Is that taking us off course? Is there another way of doing it? And it's the basics of managing 101 of a program or a project. So being clear on your milestones, being clear on, is it solving the problem I set out to solve? Creating an environment where everybody can speak up and saying, I think we've got an issue, what we're going to do about it? And collectively resolving that, because that's how you end up with watermelon projects, because someone somewhere knew it wasn't heading in the right direction and didn't say it's not giving me the result I intended, it's not giving me the return I wanted, or it's not solving the problem. So it's real practical, day-to-day operational and leadership behaviors that really make the difference.
Very good. There's another question there.
Thanks a lot. Daniel Davos, Research Director of Swisscom. Thanks a lot for a wonderful discussion, Nicole. Really great, and Marina, wonderful. My question is to Malik, maybe. I think there's no surprise that everything what you said about critical infrastructure, I fully agree. We are basically very in the same boat. Where I disagree a little bit is your notion of every task that you give now to an intern, that it can be automated. I would like to invite you to maybe rewiring your thoughts and think about if, what kind of task you might give to your interns, or if you hire the right interns. But my question is a little bit different. The question goes to the notion of, in the telco industry, we are very good, like now you or me as well, to talk and preach about global resilience and AI. But if I look then to real action, if I look into standardization where global resilience is defined, I see us as a sector, also pointing at me, at you, together, quite weak. Shouldn't we be much stronger? Shouldn't we take a more active role then in defining in standards, in all the gremiums that are defining that? Or can we rely just on others and then do what others decide?
No, pretty good. Good question. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying I'm not recruiting interns. My biggest problem is, how do I find the intern feels really continue to work in the company? Otherwise, what happens, we recruit interns, they're super smart. if we don't show them an impact, they will leave me and then immediately go to some other hyperscalers or Google or anybody. I mean, Munich is a pretty attractive destination, and my biggest challenge is that one. My biggest challenge is to find a meaningful role for an intern. Earlier, we were not super bothered, right? You get 5 interns or 20 interns, you put into different departments, different functions, right, from finance to technology to everywhere. That's what we do as a typical intern program every year. But today, the intern churn is super high. Last year, my intern churn was 36%. 36% in Munich. And that worries me to say, okay, am I able to provide that? I mean, that is my, a kind of big dilemma. How am I going to feel for them to be valuable? Otherwise, the guys are ready to go and do a startup. They say, I don't care, Telefonica is too big, it's too complex, 100-year-old company, 45 years old average age. So that's one challenge. Second thing is, telecom, while we are one, Europe itself is significantly fragmented. Look at number of operators, what we have. This is the most fragmented industry, or one industry with super high fragmentation. Go to China or US or even to India for that matter. 3 operators, you have a scale, you can participate in standards. Today, I'm sure Swisscom or Telefonica, we are fairly decent sized operations, right? When we are in 13 countries, you have that ability to go and participate in standards. Look at the number of standards, what we have contributed non-Chinese in the last 3 years. The answer is clear. We have cut the cost. And we cut the cost on the expenses standardization. We said, okay, I can't send people to Geneva. I can't send people to different conferences. So that's a challenge which we face, to be brutally honest. Yeah.
Maybe I can extend this as a last question, and then we're soon going to wrap up. Maybe to both of you, so tying it a bit to the intern and skill thing. So what do you think are skills that are essential for you in the executive board or supervisory board, right? Running companies that are essential to stay competitive 2030. So thinking about the tasks we all should give ourselves or should get better at.
For me, it's two. One is everybody need to understand technology. You don't need to know technology, you need to understand. And it's the job, at least being a technologist on the board, it's my job to educate my colleagues. Whenever I go to my board meetings, whenever my people are presenting, I say, guys, please address only my legal and HR. If they can understand, rest everybody can understand. Right? CFO, legal, seriously. Because the topic is so complex. When for a technology guy, it's obvious. Or for somebody who is in the marketing, it's obvious. But for these 3 functions, right? Finance, legal, and HR. If you can invest time on the board to educate them, your life becomes much easier. Okay. Number 1, right? The second thing is, it's about agility. It's about, I think we should never be sitting in any function. We should never be sitting and saying, this is my function. No, you have to put your hand left and right, understand the other domains, what is needed. And that's what I do with my role now as a business, head of the business. It opened my eyes. Being a technology for the last 20 years, in the last 2 years, being a CEO for the business, it opened the eyes. How the hell? A lot of times I think I should fire my CFO if I'm sitting on or my CTO, not CFO. I should fire my CTO.
You need a CFO. You need a CFO.
You need a CFO. I myself, because I'm the CTO, no? Yeah. I'm the CTO. I myself look at it, I say, wow, it is a change. It is a huge change what's happening, and ability to absorb.
Yes, ability to absorb.
Yeah. Very, very similar. I often talk about, encourage and ensure the whole community is bilingual. And what I mean by that is tech people need to speak business and business people need to speak tech.
Yes.
And then I think the other thing is think beyond boundaries boundaries of your own function. Think cross-functionally of the organization, across the industry and from other industries. Because sometimes you get so fixated in your own domain, the innovation, the inspiration comes from elsewhere. And the last thing I would say is, be risk-based, but be inquisitive and curious.
Well, thank you very much. I think we've touched so many subjects. It's very clear the rewiring is happening. The question is not whether it's happening, but where you want to stand on the board and where you want to shape things. And what I've heard from you today, resilience is not necessarily about stability. It's about how do you detect early on what's going on, how do you react, how do you shape and take decisions that make you resilient for your environment. So thank you very much for sharing all your insights. I invite you very much to stay, to come to more sessions at AI House, and to grab the speakers if you have a few minutes to mingle and have conversations. Thank you very much. See you next session.